Somewhere in a petri dish, a bright yellow blob is solving a maze. It has no brain, no neurons, no nervous system of any kind. It's a single-celled organism spread out across a surface in a network of pulsing tendrils, and yet when researchers place it in a maze with food at one end, it finds the shortest path almost every time. Here's the strange part. When researchers pull that same organism out of a maze it's already solved, then place a naive, unexperienced version of the same organism into an identical maze, something remarkable happens if the two are allowed to briefly merge. The naive version solves the maze faster, almost as if it inherited a memory from an organism it never directly experienced anything alongside. Sound familiar? It should in a strange way, because whatever this organism is doing looks a lot like something you do constantly without a brain being required at all. Remembering, warning, adjusting without necessarily involving anything you'd recognize as thought. For years, researchers who study this organism, a slime mold with no centralized nervous system whatsoever, have been trying to explain how it navigates complex environments as effectively as animals with actual brains. What they found challenges a basic assumption most people carry around without examining it. That memory requires neurons, and neurons require a brain. Here's the mechanism worth understanding. As the organism moves through its environment, it leaves behind a trail of thickened, slime-covered residue everywhere it's already explored. Researchers who study its behavior have found that the organism actively avoids re-entering areas marked with this residue, effectively reading its own trail as a signal that says, "Already searched, nothing new here." This external, physical trace functions as a kind of memory, not stored in a brain, but written directly onto the environment the organism moves through. This means the organism isn't relying on internal recall at all. It's using the world itself as a notebook, leaving marks it can later interpret, avoiding wasted effort, moving efficiently toward resources it hasn't yet reached. Memory, in this case, isn't a stored image or a retrieved fact. It's a physical residue that shapes future behavior simply by existing. Now here's where it gets stranger. Researchers studying how this organism responds to environmental stress found that when exposed to a mildly harmful condition on a regular schedule, salt, temperature changes, or bright light introduced at consistent intervals, it begins to anticipate the stressor. After a few exposures, the organism starts slowing its movement or changing its shape right before the harmful condition arrives again, even when the trigger itself hasn't yet appeared. It's not reacting. It's predicting based purely on a pattern of intervals, despite having no centralized structure capable of what you'd typically call thinking. Which means an organism without a single neuron appears capable of something startlingly close to expectation. Not awareness in any way you'd recognize, but a kind of physical, structural anticipation built from repeated experience alone. Think about what this suggests about memory more broadly. If a single cell, with no brain at all, can leave physical traces that shape its future choices and can adjust its behavior based on a repeating pattern, then memory might not be a special, brain-exclusive trick evolution invented once and reused. It might be a much more general property of living systems. Any structure capable of changing itself in response to experience and later behaving differently because of that change is technically remembering something, whether or not there's a mind involved in the traditional sense. This reframes something important about your own memory and how fragile the boundary really is between remembering and simply being changed by something that happened. Here's the part that should genuinely make you reconsider what a memory actually is. Much of what you experience is memory, especially the kind that doesn't feel like consciously recalling a fact, but instead feels like an instinct, an unexplainable pull toward or away from something. Maybe running on a mechanism far closer to the slime mold's trail marking than to a filing cabinet of stored images in your head. Your body carries countless physical traces of past experience, tension patterns, learned movement pathways, subtle chemical shifts that shape your behavior without ever surfacing as a conscious memory you could describe in words. You felt this yourself, walking into a room and feeling uneasy without knowing why. long before your conscious mind identifies the reason. Avoiding a specific street, a specific smell, a specific tone of voice with no clear memory attached. Just an unmistakable pull to stay away. That pull might not be a suppressed memory in the traditional sense. It might be closer to a slime mold's residue, a physical trace left somewhere in your nervous system, quietly shaping your path without ever needing to become a story you could tell. Let's go a layer deeper. Researchers studying multiple colonies of this same organism found that when two separate, previously unconnected colonies briefly merge into one, the resulting combined organism inherits problem-solving abilities that neither colony had shown on its own. Whatever knowledge existed in the residue trails and predictive rhythms of each colony effectively combines, producing an organism smarter, in a strictly behavioral sense, than the sum of what walked in. There's no brain doing this integration. There's no single site where knowledge resides. Instead, the memory seems to be distributed entirely throughout the organism's physical structure, its trails, its rhythms, its slowly shifting shape, functioning collectively as a kind of memory system that has no center, no storage vault, and no single moment where information could be said to be held. This raises an unsettling, fascinating possibility about your own mind. Neuroscientists studying human memory increasingly describe it not as a single filing system, but as something distributed across enormous networks of connections, changing physical structure with every experience, with no single location where a memory is stored intact, waiting to be retrieved exactly as it happened. In that light, your memory and the slime mold's memory might be running on a strikingly similar underlying principle, just at wildly different scales of complexity. Not storage, but structural change. Not retrieval, but reenactment of a pattern the system was already shaped to produce. Think about the last time you did something automatically, tying a shoelace, taking a familiar shortcut home, flinching before a door slammed, all without consciously recalling a single moment where you learned it. That automatic action is closer to the slime mold's avoidance of its own trail than it is to flipping through a mental photo album. Something in you changed once, and that change is still quietly steering you. The same way a residue trail steers an organism that has no idea, in any sense you'd recognize, that it's remembering anything at all. And maybe that's the real answer to what memory actually is. Not a vault, not a photograph. A structure, physical or biological, changed once by experience, still shaping what happens next. Whether it's running through the branching tendrils of a brainless yellow organism in a petri dish, or through the vast, tangled architecture of a mind that insists, despite everything, that it alone knows what it means to remember.